the Boz Pulse podcast. This edition, we have got a great guest today, Chris Czarnik, and I'm going to let Chris tell you about himself, but I'm going to add a flavor to the podcast that hopefully everyone will appreciate, and that is that every time I've had the opportunity to be with Chris and listen to him and hear him talk about talent, the one thing that always comes to me is, I wish I had said that. So that's our beginning. We'll be right back. Welcome, Chris. Great to see you today. We are so happy you're here. Thank you for just taking a moment with us and talking about these important topics. And you know, you and I have had a lot of conversations, and I think the most important parts about this topic in your practice on a daily basis, the most important parts of this topic, which, you know, I've had exposure to just by virtue of experience, you hit them, right? So today we're going to talk about several things: recruiting. We're going to talk about retention. We're going to talk about development. We're going to talk about competitive advantage. And then one of my favorite topics is hobbies. And if the audience doesn't know how they connect, stay tuned, because you will love to hear that part. And so right now I'm going to turn it over to Chris to give an introduction of himself, and then we'll get going.
Well, Kurt, hey, thank you very much for the opportunity to be part of this podcast. I'm so excited to bring these ideas and this message to people. So my name is Chris Czarnik, and I've spent the last 20 years figuring out why people go to and leave organizations. I have been involved in thousands and thousands of job searches in my life, and as one of the best known career coaches in the country, I don't come to this idea with there's no theory, right? There's no guessing. Really, after thousands of job searches, I'm trying to tell you what the job seekers have told me. And one of my favorite sayings from a CEO, I've done some number like 230 Vistage presentation in front of some 3,500 CEOs of companies across America. And one of them said to me, well, listen, if you're fishing for talent, Chris just spent the last 17 years with the fish. So you might want to listen to what he has to say. So the first thing that's really important to understand from my job seeker's perspective is nobody ever taught anybody how to figure out where they belong in the world of work and how to find it, Kurt. The interesting thing about that is we used to think that when you post a job ad, people know where they belong and they know what industry they belong in and they know what level job they're supposed to be in and they know what problems they can solve. But the fact is that's not true at all. In fact, if anybody's listening to this podcast, just think, what class did you have in high school, college, your master's program, or even if you're in HR with SHRM, the Society of Human Resources Managers, which I'm a big fan of? What class did you have that taught you to figure out your personality type, your skills, your abilities, your talents, the problems you could solve, the value of solving those problems? How do I identify, of the perhaps 30,000 organizations within 30 miles of your building, which organizations have those kind of problems, how to demonstrate your ability to solve those problems in a way that creates more value than the cost you're paying benefits, and how to out-interview the other 27 people who applied for the job. Has anybody on this podcast had that? My guess is no. And so that's where I've lived for the last 20 years. I created a process called Human Search Engine, which was literally a research project that I taught job seekers to do to figure out where they belong in the world of work and how to find it. I'm very proud to say that process, Human Search Engine, was identified by the 113th United States Congress as a national job search model. And in 2017, they adopted it as a tool in the House of Representatives as how to teach representatives and their staff what to do after public service, after they get voted out of office and they leave public service. What should they do next when they return back to their home state or their home area? So I don't know a lot about a lot, but I have a pretty good idea of what job seekers are thinking, why they come, why they don't come, and more, just as importantly, why they leave. And we'll get to that at the end. But one idea that I want to just plant in everyone's mind from the very beginning is this idea. If you want to think about retention, all you have to know is this: when people stop learning, they start leaving. And so we can talk about all of those parts and start at the retention stage if you'd like, because there's so much information that I can give you that you can start using tomorrow. And I'm wondering if that's a good place for us to start, Kurt.
Yeah, no, that would be great. I think one of the things that I would like you to just touch on recruiting, I think you've done some very creative things about writing ads that I think, again, this is not an ad conversation, but this is about a topic and the way you present the position. And I just like you to just kind of quickly talk about a few of the creative subject lines in some of the ads and some of the things that you have coached about.
Yeah. So one of my favorite exercises, and something that people are listening to the podcast can do as soon as the podcast is over, is the exercise I do with HR people and CEOs. I say, all right, go on your phone, because 93% of people do their job search on their phone when they decide to do a job search, and go and try and find your own job ad without using the name of your company. So what you'll realize is that when we post a job ad, we think that everybody sees it. And if nobody's applying to our job, we believe that that means that people saw the job ad, but that they made a conscious value-based decision not to apply. Well, you can audit that in real time very easily on your own phone. So if you go in and let's say you have an engineering position available, just type in, go on whatever website that you are advertising your positions, Indeed, Monster, LinkedIn, wherever that is, and just type in the job type engineer, put in your geographical radius, put in your zip code and a geographical radius around there, and then ask Indeed, for example, to show you all the job ads that show up when you look for an engineering job in that geographical radius. You will literally be looking at exactly what job seekers are looking at, and you'll come to some conclusions very quickly. Number one, if your job ad isn't on the first page, then Google Analytics tell us that only 2% of people go to the second page of any Google result. Now, I don't have to ask you to believe me here. Think about the last time you went looking for that on Amazon for that $20 electric rechargeable travel toothbrush. How many pages into the results did you go before you made a choice?
Right.
Likely one.
My thing is, you see millions of responses and you see the first 10.
Yeah, exactly.
12. And if you're really brilliant, you go to third page. Right?
Yeah.
You're really going after it, right?
So if you're not in the first, if you do your own search for your own job, and I'm even going to give you the benefit, you can even go to whatever job search website you're spending your most time, effort, and money to make your job show up. There's no guarantee that that's where people are actually going, but I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt. Try to find your own jobs that are posted without using the name of the company, and you're going to come to two conclusions very quickly. Number one, you probably can't even find your job. And number two, even if you do find your job ad looks almost identical to all the other competing job ads in that category. Now, you don't have to trust me. I really would love for you to recreate this exercise inside your organization this afternoon or tomorrow to see that I'm right. And so two things are true. We have to figure out if people are unwilling or unable to come to work for you. Unable to come to work for you would mean they can't find your job ad and don't know your company exists. And there are likely tens of thousands of organizations within 30 miles of your building. And the chances of people knowing your company exists, if they've never done business with you or have never worked for you, are pretty darn small. If you want to know if that's true, Kurt, all you have to do is go to the last 3 people you hired and ask them, what did they know about your company the day before they saw your job ad or your recruiter reached out to them? Likely you're going to find that people knew nothing about your company and didn't even know it existed. And so those people would be unable to come to work for you. Unwilling would be different. Unwilling would mean they saw your job ad. They know your company exists, but they made a value-based decision based on what was in the ad to apply at one of the other companies that had a competing job ad. And so this exercise is the very first place that I start with people to figure out why people aren't currently coming to your organization.
So just one headline. Give me one headline from an ad that you saw that created instant response.
Yeah, so I'll give you the most popular one I write when I do consulting with companies. The most popular one, we know that 38% of everybody in America, according to SHRM, leaves their job because of a negative interaction with their direct manager or supervisor. Let's call it bad boss. My guess is the people on this podcast may have had a bad boss sometime in their life.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you went if you came to Indeed, because remember, Kurt, we can agree that nobody's on Indeed as a hobby, right? Nobody's on there unless they're unhappy or disappointed or something's wrong. And so if they came there because they have a bad boss, then we meet them with the headline, "Fire your horrible boss," right? Like you would never have the name of the job in the top line, because if you do, your job ad will look like everyone else's. And when you do this exercise I've just laid out for you, you'll see that one of the biggest problems you have is that your job ad looks exactly like the other 127 of them that are vying for the attention of the exact same person. Yeah. I'll give you a second one. So we also know that one of the biggest reasons people leave jobs is because some jobs make you choose between your job and your family. Too much overtime, wrong shift, whatever that thing is. And so if that's true, by asking your own people, the last 3 people you got, why they became unhappy enough in their last job to start a job search that ended up having them come to work for you, we would write a job ad that says, it's time to choose your family over your job. And so remember that the goal of the first line of your job ad is to connect to the person's current unhappiness. And if a really easy source of reference here is just look at all of your current marketing for your products and services. My argument is that you should be selling your job opportunities the exact same way that you should be selling your products and services. And my guess is if you looked at all of your marketing materials for your products and services, they would start with some message like, Mr. or Ms. Business Owner, if you're dealing with this business issue like many people in your industry are, we can make that problem go away. Well, that's what you've done in the job ad. I'm sorry, for the ad for your products and services. You've identified an exposed nerve, a pain point, if you will, and connected with that and got the attention of somebody who is in that current state. So one easy exercise, look at your job ad, look at your marketing materials for your products and services, and then sing the Sesame Street song, one of these things is not like the other, and make them the same.
Yes. Well, that is sage advice. Appreciate that very much. That's great. That's great. I love to hear that. I mean, I think about what the possibilities are with that creativity, and I can absolutely see myself. I think folks on this podcast are listening to that, and they're saying, I can see myself clicking on fire your horrible boss. I can see myself doing that, right?
Especially, Kurt, if you just came home today and the reason you're on Indeed is because you just had one last argument with your boss, or you've come to the conclusion that he or she is never going to see, it's never going to get better and it's never going to change. The exposed nerve is, I don't know where I'm going, but I'm not staying with this boss. And then you see job ads that all look the same, but one of them says, fire your horrible boss. My guess is you're going to click.
You're there. I'm there. Right. Exactly. Well, listen, the next topics, I want to weave these together: retention and development. And so let's talk about those two, and maybe you can just throw some wisdom at that, because I know a number of companies, several of them being, direct clients of mine, have expressed a real challenge with the whole concept of developing the person to fit into their next role, which is always one of those things that I hear a lot about. It's also something that they struggle with from a cultural perspective. And what I mean by that is very simply, development is not part of their company's, operating model, if you will. They don't think that way, right? Yeah. So maybe just a few topics on that that you have, and then the last thing is going to be my favorite topic, which is hobbies. Okay.
Oh, great. Well, okay, so there's two really critical time periods with a new employee. The first time period is the 91st day of employment. All the data, we have 18 years of data on millennials in the workforce now. So this is not a guess. This is not theory. The study has been done. The data has been gathered and the conclusions have been made. We know two things. Number one, if you get a millennial to their 91st day of employment, they will stay on average at that job 3.4 years. If you think about your turnover, it likely happens in the first 90 days. And here's why it happens. Because remember, you're not asking people to come to work for you at your company. The first thing you're asking them to do is leave all their friends and everyone and everything they know behind. when people leave their job and leave all their friends and everyone they know behind, when they come to work for you, their first concern is not whether they will be a good accountant for you. Their first concern is, will anybody sit with me at lunch on the second day? I'm telling you, overwhelmingly, one of the most important messages I send to companies around the country is job change is an emotional decision, not a financial one. Before anybody worries about making more money in their next job, they first have to become dissatisfied or unhappy in their current role enough that they are willing to leave all their friends and everyone and everything they know behind. That's a pretty big decision. So when they leave all them behind, the first thing that they want to know is there anybody like there at the organization like me? Because every time you or any human being goes through trauma, Kurt, one of the very first things we do is we find somebody to go talk to about that, right? A friend, a trusted peer, our mom, our dad, our brother, our sister. Well, remember, this new employee you just hired, they just left all those people behind. They're sitting in a room full of strangers, and we might think that person, we'd love for them to go to their new supervisor or manager. I don't know. In high school or in junior high, when you forgot your locker combination, did you run to the principal's office a lot? No, because that was the principal. You don't run to your new boss when you have a problem. So what we want to do is create a mentor program and let people who have been in the organization between 18 and 36 months as their first opportunity to grow inside the organization. Before we make them the supervisor or the manager of anything, how about we let them be a mentor to a new employee and guide them through this very important first 91 days of employment by creating a relationship with them, introducing them to new people, taking them out to lunch, having conversations with people inside the organization, having conversations with them about different department heads. And the reason this is really important is a saying that I use all the time, which is, it's really easy to leave a company, but it's really hard to leave people. If we connect people to other people in the first 90 days, they're no longer leaving ABC company. If I'm going to leave in the first 90 days, but I've had a good mentor and had conversations and connections with different people, now I have to leave Sarah and Tom and Bob and my supervisor and my manager and the maintenance person and Kurt and all these other people that I've created a relationship with. But if I don't have a relationship with anybody, if I don't feel like anybody cares whether I come or stay, of course I can leave. There's 2 open jobs for every person in America. Finding a new job's easy.
Right.
But what we know for sure is that when people, in the newest study that just came out some 3 months ago from a very, very highly regarded HR source, said that the number one reason that people stay is because they have a best friend at work. If you have a best friend at work, it's the number one retention strategy. So why wouldn't we start by creating a mentor opportunity as a first opportunity for a person to grow, right? You've been a good employee. Let's see if you can be a good mentor, coach, and teacher, guide, if you will, to this new employee. And also, we give an opportunity to let that person create relational roots with people in the organization very, very early in their time, right?
Right.
The second thing we want to think about here is the other period of time that's really important is right at 3 years. We have all the evidence that says millennials will leave companies, not jobs. They will change companies every 3 years over the last 18 years. They don't want to. I hope people are hearing this. It's not a foregone conclusion. It's not something that you can't do anything about. They have left every 3.4 years because when millennials stop learning, they start leaving. This is the first generation, Kurt, that has had access to the combined knowledge of the history of the world in 15 seconds through Google their entire life. They are learning entities. They don't know how to not learn. And when they stop learning, they start leaving. And that learning phase, if you think about every job you've had, happens somewhere around the 3rd year, right? The first year, very interesting. Meet all the people, learn your job. Second year, learn how your job interacts with other departments, other divisions, customers, vendors. But the 3rd year, we pretty much know the lay of the land and what we're supposed to do, and there's not that much to learn. And so we can create something called subject matter experts for people who've been in the organization more than 3 years, that we can identify business problems that are circular repeating problems in our organization, whether they have to do with quality, or they have to do with safety or compliance or new product development or conflict resolution or analytical problem solving or 5S or lean manufacturing. We can identify critical ideas that our organization would really value having a subject matter expert on, and we can allow that person right around their third year to spend 2 hours a week on company time for the next 6 months, learning everything they can using all the resources of the internet to find best practices and benchmarks on a very specific topic, and then use those ideas in order to solve that problem inside the organization. So there's obviously a lot more that I do with it as a consultant with organizations. There's a whole model that I build. But this whole idea is, listen, you have people in your organization that you highly value. And you can even see that you could see them at some point in the future at a higher level of service for your organization. But you don't have anywhere to promote them right now. There's only so many supervisor roles, so many manager roles. Their boss might be only 3 years older and they're not going anywhere. So how do we develop that person without promoting them? We allow them to become a subject matter expert in an area that would really be valuable to the organization. And if you're a leader in an organization, think about it this way. If you could have a subject matter expert to make the 7 biggest problems in your organization go away using the best practices and benchmarks from all the other organizations around the world, what would your life be like if those 7 problems went away? What could you get to? Who could you sell to? What could you develop, right? And so that's the promise here, that we no longer have to provide all the training for people with what's on YouTube and Google and Coursera and LinkedIn Learning and Masterclass and all those other online learning platforms. Some of the best ideas from the greatest minds in these topics are already online in classes. Right. And we just need to give people an opportunity to choose one of those topics that are meaningful to them and to the company, spend some time studying it, and then use what they've learned to make that problem go away. That's the development. I call that a parking lot for talent that they can do before they get promoted.
So I think that those ideas are so game changing, if you will, right? And here's why I think, as you talk about that, when you think about this, and actually, anecdotally, I have a client opportunity that's asking this question almost precisely. That is, how do I get people who are good at their job, but I don't have any place to move them to? We won't take a lot of time with this, but I was asked recently, what is a salary cap? Now, in the context of this discussion, a salary cap means the role that they're in, they've got a lid effectively in terms of their compensation. So my response to them was, the idea of a salary cap is only limited by the amount of development that you can give one of your employees, because they will never have a salary cap if we're doing something like you're talking about here. And I think that in itself, as well as retaining, keeping attention, learning, all of the things that you've already said, are huge drivers in happiness and long-term success of an employee. So
and I have an organization right now that identifies the cost of the problem first, and then if this person solves this problem, builds a team to solve that problem, they will literally give them 10% of the value of solving that problem for 1 year for solving that problem. So the bonus, right, if you're solving a $500,000 problem, your organization would gladly pay out a $50,000 bonus one time to make that $500,000 problem that happens every year go away for the rest of the life of the company.
Yeah, that is a huge and great idea. I love it. I know people listening to this are saying to themselves, I wish I'd thought of that.
Yeah, and there's almost no cost in it, almost no work for HR or managers. It's taken me a while to build this over the last 7 years.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure we have the answer now.
I can appreciate that. That's fantastic. Listen, just a quick comment on competitive advantage and what I'm looking for in competitive advantage, just a couple of tidbits. What would you kind of classify in all of your experience are some of the competitive advantages of building programs like you're describing in both the retention and development area and in the recruiting area?
Yeah, so there's 2 things that come to mind immediately. So first of all, one of the exercises I have companies do is identifying the cost of doing nothing. In other words, if you can identify the cost of an open position in your organization, right? If you can say, well, for each salesperson we don't fill, it's costing us $85,000 a year, and we have 4 of those positions open. Well, now we have a $340,000 opportunity, out of pocket or opportunity costs inside the organization that can instantly take all. We already have the critical mass. We already have the production capabilities. We already have the distribution, the logistics. We can sell more. We just need more customers to sell to, but we need customers to do that. So number one, you already built this model to produce this product or service. Now you can scale the amount that you sell. The second thing we know is that the average cost, according to SHRM, of losing and replacing an employee, if you lose them due to a lack of retention, is 40% of that person's annual wages. So all you have to do to figure out what the cost of not doing these retention strategies is to take the number of employees you lost last year, multiply that by their annual wages times 0.4, and you'll be able to understand what was the cost of not doing the retention strategy. And what's really interesting about that is we know that the companies that are the most innovative are the ones who solve the basic problems of quality, safety, productivity at a base level, and teach analytical problem solving, new product ideation, those kind. But we need somebody to lead those things. So not only on the backside are we fixing everything that's holding us back, but also when you find somebody who becomes a subject matter expert, and there are classes from the Googles of the world and the Yahoos and the Teslas of the world online that you can learn from in new product ideation. You don't have to create a 7-person team and hire 4 people. You can have subject matter experts on analytical problem solving, new product ideation, sales, creating personas of new customer bases, AI, chatbot, GPT, all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And those competitive advantages. Listen, technology is going to lead the way. So why wouldn't you start creating subject matter experts in those technologies right now today by just letting them go studying it with all the resources that are already available in curriculum format online?
Yeah, I think that's great. And you know, the last thing I would say about that is it doesn't take sophisticated math to figure out that if you're the company that is not paying attention to those costs, and there's another company you're competing with that is paying attention to those costs, you are at a dead-landed competitive disadvantage.
Yeah. And Kurt, remember, I didn't say this at the beginning. The math is absolutely, we're 8 million people short for the next 10 years.
Right.
There's no politics, there's no religion, there's no theory, right? We're 8 million people short as my generation and yours retires at a rate of some number between 12 and 14,000 people a day. So the biggest competitive advantage is there are not enough breathing human beings in America to fill all the open jobs being vacated by our generation leaving. So what's the competitive advantage? We've been for 30 years able to say the customer's always right, only because we never had to worry about having people to provide the products and services for our customers. Well, in the next 10 years, we do. There has to be winners and losers. That's why my book, Winning the War for Talent, is titled that way. There has to be winners and losers in the war for talent. You don't have to do these ideas that I'm talking about, but if you don't, you will be choosing one of those 2 lanes.
Yeah. That's a great point. Well, the last thing, guess what? Hobbies. Let's talk about the context of hobbies and how important they are.
Yeah, so this is really interesting. Remember that if you want people to change industries, we call this concept changing lanes. So you know that an accountant in manufacturing could be an accountant in your nonprofit organization because the skill is accounting. The skill isn't manufacturing, the skill is accounting. And those things transfer. But our job ads for 40 years told people don't dare try to change lanes, right? For 40 years, if you don't have 4 years of experience and 3 years of education, don't even bother applying. So there are lots of people who have skills and abilities that could easily transfer from their industry into yours that could fit fine. In fact, if you look at your people you've hired over the last 3 or 4 years, you've already had people leave their industry and come to yours because their skill sets transfer. Well, how do we let them know that they fit? How do we know that if I transfer from my industry into a completely different industry where I don't know anyone and don't have specific industry specific knowledge, how do I know that I fit? Well, the easiest way to identify people's common personality types is by their hobbies. So literally, especially for people who are more hourly, right, entry level, we're going to train them to do the job our way, any machine operator, truck driver, those kind of roles. One of the easiest ways is to interview your current best people in that role, find their common hobbies, and actually put them in the job ad. In other words, if you're looking for machine operators, you say, our last 4 great machine operators that we hired love mountain biking, love working on cars, home improvement, and working out. If that sounds like you, then you sound like us. What you're saying is, we don't care where you come from, but you will fit. And we know we're asking you to leave all your friends and everyone you know, but the one thing we can guarantee you is if you love these hobbies, you'll be surrounded by a bunch of people in the lunchroom on your second day who love those things as well. And it'll be very easy for you to fit into our organization.
Wow. I just fascinate over that concept. I love it. I think it's absolutely correct. And I'm sure that the audience that's listening to this is doing a very interesting mind games right now with themselves about how you could implement this kind of program. So, well, listen, it has been fantastic talking to you. I want you to take a second, talk about your book, talk about yourself, and how we can get in touch with you, and folks in the audience can get in touch with you.
Sure. I spent most of my life on the road, speaking at large conferences and working with individual companies. When I work with an individual company, I come in for one day, build a 4-person team, and then provide between 4 and 8 hours of virtual coaching over the next couple of months as they implement the strategies to make sure that I can guide them to success with best practices and ideas from other companies. The website's chrisczarnik.com, ChrisCzarnik, chrisczarnik.com. The book is Winning the War for Talent. And, I'd love for you to go to the website. There's lots of videos. There's lots of testimonials, companies from government to manufacturing to financial services. The process is the same regardless of the industry. And I'm some 143 organizations in so far. And if people do the work, we've yet to have a company that didn't have really tremendous success. So remember, my people, and I'll leave you with this thought, Kurt, if you don't mind. Remember, it's not that people don't want to work, because there are people showing up for way worse jobs than yours all around you every day. What should bother you as somebody with a great job, with a great company available, is not that people don't want to work. It's that people are showing up for way worse jobs than those reliably every single day. So why aren't they coming to your place, right? You'd think it's not reasonable to think they don't want your better pay and better benefits and a better environment. And so the question is, are they unwilling or unable to leave their job and come to your better job? And so one of the exercises that you can do is go talk to your people, find out how they found you, why they chose you over all the other people, and then do that exercise looking for your job ad. And one of my favorite sayings is, if you went fishing and you didn't catch any fish and you walked around blaming the fish, people would laugh at you. What are we doing blaming the job seekers? They want a better job. Nobody's taught them how to find you. We don't wait for customers to come to us. We go to them. And so you can use the exact same concepts, finding great talent and bringing them into your organization.
Well, my friend, it has certainly been a fantastic time. Thank you very much. We will put the link to your website, excuse me, in the podcast notes. So anybody who just wants a reference on that, we'll have it there. They can get to it. Listen, we really appreciate your time today. Thank you. I've enjoyed myself thoroughly. Take care, my friend.
Outstanding. My great pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity to be with you today.
Thanks.